Hello, I'm Joe Walensky, and I'm the program manager for the ConveyUX conference that we have coming up in Seattle in January. And I'm speaking with some of the people that will be presenting talks at the event. And I'm speaking today with Jane Guthrie. Hello, Jane.
Hi, Joe.
And where are you speaking to us from today?
Today I'm speaking with you all from Atlanta, Georgia.
All right, well, we're a long ways apart, but the connection is clear. So let's get started. I thought maybe a good place to start would be for you to just talk a little bit about where you're working, the type of work that you're doing now, types of projects that you're typically involved in.
Sure. Well, I'm consulting right now, work for, a consulting company. So I've been working on an enterprise responsive redesign for the past 10 months or so for a large telecommunications company. And that's been really interesting. It's the first time I've really done a responsive enterprise project. So that's had its challenges. Um, we have had an interesting time mostly getting all the stakeholders on board because of there are so many people being involved. So sometimes, the work is complicated. It's either, the design is hard to figure out, the information architecture, um, and how we're going to handle that. But this time, it's really been the politics, and that's been a real lesson for me. It's probably been the most complicated project I've ever worked on politically. So, design is somewhat the deliverables and the process, but it's also getting people on board with what you're doing. And that's some of what I'll be talking about in my talk. But it's really been a challenge and something that I've had to kind of learn how to get people involved. And what I've learned is that you have to get your stakeholders involved in the process, even if they're at a really senior level, because presenting to them final pieces is it's usually very risky, because if they haven't seen something during the process and seen how it's developed, they're really not likely to buy into it. So getting just people involved early in the process and figuring out a way to do that effectively has really been something I've been working on for this project.
Oh, it sounds interesting, and I was just listening to I was at World Usability Day listening to a talk by Tamara Adlin, and she was talking about how important it is to make sure that the things that you're working on match the business goals of the organization and the stakeholders. But then her main point was that in a lot of cases those business goals are actually not, either they're not there, they're not really that specific, or they don't actually match up with the types of things that you're in the room talking about. And it's just kind of illuminating to hear talk about it that way, because a lot of times we just come into a project and assume that everybody there already has their goals about what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, the thing with our project is that there were no really well-defined business goals. And so we're in the process of design, and what are you designing towards? We kind of had to, unfortunately, kind of create some as we do. We ad lib, and then go through the process of looking at design iterations and thinking about what the goals might be. So it's kind of a backwards thing, but all projects are imperfect. I've never worked on a smooth project that just goes, exactly according to plan. So you just have to kind of go with it.
Well, I'm sure you're always thinking about you have new design thoughts and things that you're interested in, and so I was just wondering if what some of those things might be. Are there any new exciting techniques or ideas that you're working toward?
Well, I'm not working on any new exciting techniques. I would say that right now I've been doing a lot of thinking about change and just the process of how to design for change. Um, as designers, we're always asked to redesign something or imagine something new. But for me, it's really been a lot about redesigning. and we kind of sell this work and we go into it, and we're always asked to kind of redesign everything, especially if you're maybe working with an agency or sometimes even as a consultant. You're kind of just asked, hey, just make it better, redesign it. But we never really think about if it's necessary to change the whole thing and what the impact of change will be on our users. Like, we do usability testing for small pieces of it, or just sometimes we test the whole thing, and we ask people like, what do you think? But that's just one small situation, one specific context. When people are in their homes and they're asked to do something completely differently with a piece of software or a site, it can be really frustrating and alienating and kind of like make you feel like you've lost control. And we all know that when you don't have a sense of control over what you're doing, you become unhappy and you become frustrated, and you tend not to use that service, especially when you have other services. So I'm really trying to look at and think about change, and be more thoughtful and be more intentional in our design process, to make sure that we really think about the context of use, and that so that when we create something new, it's more readily adopted, or it's almost like people didn't notice that we changed something. I mean, I think that's been like Amazon's model for a long time, where they go in and they make small changes, like really, really small changes over time, and we don't really notice it. But if you look at Amazon's design from 5 years ago to today, it looks really different. So, but that kind of is intentional design. They have a team working on things internally, and that's the way they go about it. So it's just something that interests me, and something I'd like to do more research on.
All right, well, that was nice to hear about. Um, your topic at the conference is how to successfully sell your UX vision. So, without going into all the details of that, kind of what's the genesis or the seed that had you putting together these ideas?
Well, I've been pitching ideas for a long time, and whether you're pitching internally to your senior managers, or you're pitching to a client, you're always trying to sell an idea. And over the years, I've been thinking about the components of what makes a pitch successful, and so I kind of put together some pointers from experience, and I realized at my last agency gig that you know that it matters to have the right combination of things presented in the right way, and that's what I'm going to talk about at ConveyUX.
All right, great. Well, thanks for taking a few minutes to talk with me about this. Look forward to seeing you when you get here in Seattle in a couple of months.
Great, thanks, Joe.
All right, thank you, Jane.